1869, when Congress was still chock-a-block full of original framers of the Constitution, I might add, which does back up claims that the administrative bodies are implied in the Constitution. The idea behind creating these agencies, instead of having Congress or the president alone in charge of implementing the laws, because it turns out it takes a lot of work to run a country, and agencies are in charge of creating a lot of regulations. Further, agencies are staffed by subject matter experts, at least in theory. So, for example, the people in the EPA have spent their careers learning about environmental policy and regulation, and are therefore much better positioned to implement a law than the lone president or congresspeople. And the Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld the constitutionality of administrative agencies, and tends to give a lot of deference to their decisions because they are the subject matter experts. While Congress often creates the agencies, most of them technically fall under the purview of the executive branch, of which the president is the head, because the Constitution vests the power to faithfully execute the laws of the country in the president in Article 2. Admin agencies do just that. They execute the laws, and they oversee said execution in a way that a single executive couldn't, and also in a way that ensures extensive checks and balances over executive authority. But this is why the president typically appoints heads of all these agencies, because they're technically part of the executive branch. But while the heads of those agencies
Oh, look. Donald Rumsfeld mentioned
agencies, because they're technically part.
Dick Cheney. We got celebrity here. We got Satan and his right-hand man.
Of the executive branch. But while the heads of those agencies come and go with the politics of the time, the people operating under them are not tied to politics or a president, and tend to make careers out of working in those agencies. This again creates a modicum of separations of powers and ensures that people with subject matter expertise are staffing these agencies. So sure, you can appoint the Attorney General as president, but you can't fire all the prosecutors who don't agree with you. I was working at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston the day that Jeff Sessions was fired, and the jubilation some of those lawyers felt, it was palpable. And they don't have to worry about losing their job because of that. Or at least not for now. Okay, so this is why administrative law is considered the fourth branch of government. It wields a lot of power. Some would say too much power. Which is why Project 2025 is so dead set on gutting administrative bodies. Are we on the same page? Great. You are now more of an expert on admin law than 99% of the US population. The foreword in Project 2025's policy manifesto lays out their objections to the current state of affairs. Congress passes intentionally vague laws that delegate decision-making over a given issue to a federal agency. That agency's bureaucrats, not just unelected but seemingly unfireable, then leap at the chance to fill the vacuum created by Congress's preening cowardice. The federal government is growing larger and less constitutionally accountable, even to the president, every year. Okay, so they're saying there's too many bureaucrats and the president doesn't have enough power. It continues. The conservative promise lays out how to fire supposedly unfireable federal bureaucrats, how to shutter wasteful and corrupt bureaus and offices, how to muzzle woke propaganda at every level of government, how to restore the American people's constitutional authority over the administrative state, and how to save untold taxpayer dollars in the process. So they're basically Ron Swansoning the government, attempting to put people in places of power to dismantle federal agencies from the inside. Except it's not a fun joke about a lovable libertarian with a mustache. It has far-reaching consequences that are made all the more dire when you learn about the unitary executive theory.
Yeah, it's not about a lovable libertarian with mustache. It's about, like 50 mustached libertarians that are just not lovable in any way, shape, or form. They're all just demons.
Theory upon which many of the Project 2025 recommendations rely. Okay, we got admin law, unitary executive theory. We are getting into some deep constitutional law principles today, my friends. And if you want even more of a primer on constitutional law, check out my free 2-week email course called Smartass Civics. Sign up to receive daily bite-sized morsels of con law delivered straight to your inbox. You'll be beating your racist Uncle Rick at arguments by Thanksgiving. Link in the description. Okay, so unitary executive theory. It's this batshit theory that has only been made up in the last few decades. In fact, we have our good old friend Ronald fucking Reagan, to blame once again for its proliferation, because of course. The theory came to prominence during Reagan, but really put down roots during the presidency of George W. Bush. Basically, the theory rejects the idea of 3 equal branches of government put in place to ensure a rigorous system of checks and balances so no one branch becomes too powerful. Instead, the unitary executive theory says actually, inherent in Article 2 of the Constitution, the president has complete control of the executive branch. So Congress can't create all of these agencies and put power in the hands of agency heads to make decisions. That power is supposed to be concentrated in the hands of the one singular executive. Reagan's lawyers came up with the idea in order to push deregulation. Congress can't create power.
This picture aged poorly. This cartoon aged poorly.
Is supposed to be concentrated in the hands of the one singular executive. Reagan's lawyers came up with the idea in order to push deregulatory efforts. Bush Jr. used it to lend validity to his exercises of power after 9/11. While Obama expressed a more modest view of presidential power initially, he too exercised authority that circumvented Congress in several policy areas, especially in the deployment of U.S. military forces overseas. And
also not to mention the use of drone strikes. He was the drone king until Trump showed up, you know. I love her. Don't get me wrong, I love Leisha, but she's a little libbed up and leaves some things that, you know, makes the Democrats, I mean, look obviously like the worst choice, but also giving them a little too much credit, I think.
And Trump, of course, came in and was like, hold my Big Mac, let me try this. And he frequently tested the bounds of acceptable exercise of executive power. From Muslim bans to the border to threatening sanctuary cities, he declared over and over that his authority extended to overriding congressional laws and funding authority. As one judge stated in response to Trump's threats against sanctuary cities, the separation of powers acts as a check on tyranny and the concentration of power. If the executive branch can determine policy and then use the power of the purse to mandate compliance with that policy by the state and local governments, all without authorization or even acquiescence of elected legislators, that check against tyranny is forsaken. Trump considered himself and his presidential powers not only beyond the bounds of Congress, but even beyond the bounds of judicial review, arguing that his travel ban was unreviewable by the federal courts. The judge in that case declared there is no precedent to support this claimed unreviewability, which runs contrary to the fundamental structure of our constitutional democracy.
Man, isn't that weird? Isn't that weird how the Supreme Court, you know, almost a year ago, was blatantly saying, hey, there's no precedent to support the claim, this claimed unreviewability, you know, that, like, the president can do anything without judicial review. You know, he doesn't have that kind of unchecked power. Now, granted, like a year later, he has the unchecked power to SEAL Team 6 on and assassinate his political opponents and rivals, but he can't just make, you know, he can do stuff that's, like, illegal, and he can, you know, whatever, but he can't, you know, nothing he does is not unreviewable. How has this not caused them to go back and like and just be like,
even scholars who are in favor of wide-reaching executive power are appalled at Trump's behavior. John Yoo advocates in favor of the unitary executive theory and famously wrote a memo defending the legality of waterboarding under Bush. But he also wrote a New York Times editorial entitled "Executive Power Run Amok," saying, "Even I have grave concerns about Mr. Trump's uses of presidential power."
How's that?
Yikes.
Yeah, how's that? This guy wrote a book where he said, hey, you know, waterboarding people is cool. Torture is poggers. We should just keep that up, all right? And even that guy was like, I'm afraid of what Donald Trump can do with unregulated power and unchecked power.
He also wrote a New York Times editorial entitled "Executive Power Run Amok," saying, "Even I have grave concerns about Mr. Trump's uses of presidential power." Yikes.
Yikes.
But it appears that Project 2025 is supporting the idea that the president should constitutionally be entitled to vast levels of control over all administrative agencies, what they do, and who runs and staffs them from the top down, and Congress should have no ability to check that executive authority. Awesome. Many constitutional law scholars argue that this is beyond the bounds of the Constitution, no matter how you look at it. But the first administration of Donald Trump, whether or not there's a second, has already done the damage. As Jeffrey Crouch writes in his 2020 book on the unitary executive theory, yes, there are entire books about this, once precedents have been established for presidents to exercise expansive presidential powers with little pushback, future chief executives will be less likely to feel responsible.
Dude, the English language is so kind of like, can we fix this? Once precedents have been established for presidents to exercise expansive can we find a better word for these stuff?
For dialing them back. And Project 2025 is betting on just that, with its expansive overhaul of every administrative agency in the country. If he does get back in the White House, Trump has made clear that he'll finish what he started, declaring he will find and remove the radicals who have infiltrated the Federal Department of Education, and promising to demolish the deep state.
We will expel the warmongers from our government. We will drive out the globalists. We will cast out the communists, Marxists, and fascists. And we will throw off the sick political class that hates our country.
He plans to do this in part through what's been called Schedule F, a plan that Project 2025 appears to adopt as well. In the waning days of Trump's presidency, he passed an executive order called Creating Schedule F in the Accepted Service. This order removed employment protections from career officials, those who work in government agencies in a non-political, non-appointed position, deeming them Schedule F employees who may be fired at will by the president, presumably if they don't show sufficient loyalty or execute the duties of the agency in the way the president deems necessary, effectively stripping any sort of checks or balances on the president's ability to control federal agencies from the top down. In fact, two former Trump White House aides, Johnny McEntee and Russell Vought, who were instrumental to Schedule F, are also involved in Project 2025, indicating a continuation of the policy by whatever conservative president next takes the White House. McEntee is quoted as saying, "Our current
hold on. Isn't that the D-bag, the date right stuff D-bag?
A plan that Project 2025 appears to adopt as well. In the waning days of Trump's presidency, he passed an executive order called Creating Schedule F in the Accepted Agencies. There is a conservative president next take 2025, indicating who were in fact two former Trump White House aides, Johnny McEntee.
It is! Oh, it's that creep. That's his name. I knew he was an architect of Project 2025. I just forgot that was his name, Johnny McEntee. This gross turd in the punch bowl. Oh, there's gonna be gaming. Don't worry, gaming's coming right after this. After we're done with this video. Look at it. This is this. It's just so. He's so gross.
So I can't have an opinion on abortion because I don't have a uterus, but I can be a woman without one? Got it.
What a gross turd.
McEntee and Russell Vought, who were instrumental to Schedule F, are also involved in Project 2025, indicating a continuation of the policy by whatever conservative president next takes the White House. McEntee is quoted as saying,
This turd nugget is also the guy who decided that it would be a great idea to make a dating app just for conservative people, like Tinder or Bumble or whatever, but for just conservatives. And it was literally only used by conservative men. Like, only men, because the women went on there and found it, like, disgusting and gross. True. 2025 is in about 7 months, but we got elections in, like, a month. So I think it's a nice refresher for people to understand the psychotic American psychopath motherfuckers that are trying to destroy everything cool and awesome, because they don't know what they want in life. and women won't date them or talk to them.
Current executive branch was conceived of by liberals for the purpose
Unless,
of
of course, your name's Johnny McEntee and your method of conversing with women is while they're 17 and they're about to turn 18. Yeah, he's that kind of guy.
Liberal policies. There is no way to make the existing structure function in a conservative manner. It's not enough to get the personnel right. What's necessary is a complete system overhaul. And that is at the heart of Project 2025's plan. None of their policies and wedge issues work without gutting the administrative state and concentrating more power in the hands of the president. Of course, their goal is also to pack Congress and the courts with as many conservatives as possible, but that's less of a problem when you establish an executive with unchecked power. And through that unchecked power, the new conservative executive will be able to gut agencies and put people in place to further conservative agendas. Those include a push away from environmental protections in favor of becoming a fossil fuels industry leader, a move away from what they call globalism, including encouraging corporations to bring jobs back from overseas, and the foreword to the manifesto declares, "Those who run our so-called American corporations have bent to the will of the woke agenda and care more for their foreign investors and organizations than their American workers and customers." Today, nearly every top-tier U.S. university president or Wall Street hedge fund manager has more in common with a socialist European head of state than with the parents at a high school football game in Waco, Texas.
Okay, one. No. What kind of Wall Street hedge fund manager agrees with, is even friends with a socialist? Even knows what a socialist is? Two, why did you choose Waco, Texas? That's a really weird place to... Like, you know what happened at Waco, right? They probably didn't thought was
elites'
great.
entire identity, it seems, is wrapped up in their sense of superiority over those people. But under our Constitution, they are the mere equals of the workers who shower after work instead of before. And while that passage is absolutely unhinged for many reasons, there are a few things we can agree on here. American corporations absolutely do care more for their foreign investors and organizations than their American workers and customers. And yeah, they hide behind woke language like DEI while also being awful for workers, the environment, and equality writ large. But I think conservatives genuinely think that corporations actually believe the DEI bullshit they spew, and that it's not just a way to avoid lawsuits. Like, come on guys, I thought you were a little smarter than that. Also, I would wager a bet that the framers of our Constitution,
the
largely products of the Academy, did not consider themselves equal to laborers who showered after work. The policy also shows an outsized obsession with China, another popular conservative talking point, saying that China is a totalitarian enemy of the United States, not a strategic partner or fair competitor, and that America's elites have betrayed the American people. The solution to all of the above problems is not to tinker with this or that government program to replace this or that bureaucrat. These are problems not of technocratic efficiency, but of national sovereignty and constitutional governance. We solve them not by trimming and reshaping the leaves, but by ripping out the trees, root and branch. The report goes on to say, illegal immigration should be ended, not mitigated. The border sealed, not reprioritized. Economic engagement with China should be ended, not rethought. Our manufacturing and industrial base should be restored, not allowed to deteriorate further. Confucius Institutes, TikTok, and any other arm of Chinese propaganda and espionage should be outlawed, not merely monitored. Another area of grave concern for Project 2025 is the proliferation of LGBTQ ideas and transgenderism, suggesting draconian measures that many critics are saying would effectively criminalize LGBTQ expression. As the foreword to the manifesto says, the next conservative president must make the institutions of American civil society hard targets for woke culture warriors. This starts with deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender...
We gotta delete that sogi.
Gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other term used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights out of every federal rule, agency regulation, contract, grant, regulation, and piece of legislation that exists. It goes on to say, pornography manifested today in the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children has no claim to First Amendment protection. Its purveyors are child predators and misogynistic exploiters of women. Their product is as addictive as any illicit drug and as psychologically destructive as any crime. Pornography should be outlawed. The people who produce and distribute it should be imprisoned. Educators and public librarians who purvey it should be classed as registered sex offenders. And telecommunications and technology firms that facilitate its spread should be shuttered. As far as I can tell, of being trans as registered sex offenders, and telecommunications and technology firms that facilitate its spread should be shuttered. As far as I can tell, to them, pornography includes any discussion of being transgender or really discussion of sexual and gender identity, period, based on their reference to educators and public librarians who've been under attack for allowing children to check out such psychologically destructive books as And Tango Makes Three, a book about gay penguins, and Sparkle Boy, a book about a little kid who wears a tutu. But the rape and murder in the Bible is fine and definitely requires zero therapy later in life.
Do you guys want to hear the most unhinged string of words that have ever been uttered in the halls of Congress and the halls of our government? Do you want to be just utterly confused beyond all belief? Well, I hope you're ready, because here it comes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I confess I'm a little confused, and I appreciate the argument or discussion that we've been having, but for me, it's a little too conceptual or, I don't know, metaphysical or theological or whatever you want to call it. I want to try to understand what you're asking us to do. Let's take two books that have been much discussed.
This was a year ago.
The first one is called All Boys Aren't Blue, and I will quote from it. I put some lube on and got him on his knees, and I began to slide into him from behind. I pulled out of him and kissed him while he masturbated. He asked me to turn over while he slipped a condom on himself. This was my ass, and I was struggling to imagine someone inside me.
This is not a random like school board meeting trying to get books banned. This is not like some state level whatever, like books and whatever. This is John Kennedy. You're like, who is John Kennedy? Who is this old man reading some of the most explicit things I have ever heard that makes some of the fanfic forums that I remember perusing as a child look tame? He is a U.S. Senator. Former governor of Louisiana, he is now the incumbent Republican senator for Louisiana.
He got on top and slowly inserted himself into me. It was the worst pain I think I have ever felt in my life. Eventually, I felt a mix of pleasure with the pain. Close quote. All Boys Aren't Blue. The second is another much discussed book. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's called Genderqueer. Okay? Let me read an excerpt from that. Quote, I got a new strap-on harness today. I can't wait to put it on you. It will fit my favorite dildo perfectly. You're going to look so hot. I can't wait to have your cock in my mouth. I'm going to give you the blowjob of your life. Then I want you inside of me. End quote.
What are we doing? What are we doing as a fucking country? What are we doing? What are we doing? We're gonna skip the rest of whatever the fuck he says. They're two books. They're two graphic novel books, like that he's saying like are inappropriate to have in school, but like they're not random books like that are just sitting around in like your kindergarten or first. It's like they're high school or higher books that they're just like, ugh. And they're also specialty request books. Like they're not just lining the shelves. And he's sitting here being like, "Is this okay that you're teaching young children how to give blowjobs?" And this poor bastard, let's see what he has to say in response.
First of all, there's this...
Don't give me a speech. Tell me what you're asking me to do.
With all due respect, Senator, and the words you spoke are disturbing, especially coming out of your mouth is very disturbing. But I would also tell you that we're not advocating for kids to read porn, to Senator Booker's point.
What are you advocating for?
We are advocating for parents, random parents, not to have the ability, under the guise of keeping kids safe, to try and challenge the world view of every single manner on these issues.
You're getting conceptual game.
I'm not getting conceptual. I'm saying
yes,
that
you are. Yes.
Explain to me the problem. Well, here's the problem: is that it seems that there are certain forces within our communities that are trying to use every single excuse to push, an agenda against the gay and LGBT. Don't get conceptual on me now, boy. Yeah, tell me what my answer is.
Yes, you are, because you're getting conceptual game.
I'm not getting conceptual. I'm saying that...
Yes, you are, because I want to know what you're recommending. It sounds to me like what some of you are saying the librarians should decide who gets to see that book.
I'm saying when individual parents are allowed to make a decision of where that line is, and To Kill a Mockingbird, which involves a rape scene, should that book be pulled from our libraries? I think it becomes a slippery slope.
I think you ought to think about it a little bit more before you come here.
I've thought about,
Senator, you're going to propose something, you ought to be able, in 30 seconds, to be able to explain what you're asking us to do. Ms. Kelly, what do you understand?
What?
Well, let me skip you. Propose something, you ought to think about it a little bit more before you come here.
I've thought about,
Senator, you're going to propose something, you ought to be able, in 30 seconds, to be able to explain what you're asking us to do.
Diamond, in 30 seconds, explain to me the entirety of the citric acid cycle. The one cycle. Go. $20 seconds. 15. 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm sorry. According to this walking carcass, you're not an expert in anything.
You ought to be able a little bit more before you come here.
I've thought about,
Senator, you're going to propose something, you ought to be able, in 30 seconds, to be able to explain what you're asking us to do.
Pretty far.
Ms. Kelly, what do you understand? Well, let me skip you for a second. Mr. Cameron.
What the?
Tell me
what just happened?
You're proposing.
I've never seen that before.
Mix.
What the fuck just happened there?
Kelly, what do you understand? Well, let me skip you for a second. Mr. Cameron. Tell me what you're proposing.
It's pronounced mix.
Mix? Is that how would you like me to refer to you?
Senator, your definition of sexual is synonymous with LGBTQ identity.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you to tell me you read those two excerpts.
Genderqueer.
Do you think that, are you asking that only librarians and not parents have any say and whether minors can read those books. Is that what you're saying?
Genderqueer has never been in my school library, so it's never been banned.
Well, suppose it was. Should it be up just to the librarian, or should parents have a say?
There should be facilitation of collaboration between
Should
students,
parents have
and
a say?
educators. Parents should be working with students and educators to be
Okay.
making decisions, because
All right,
students are
and who
these-
decides ultimately? The librarian, or do you take a vote, or who takes the vote?
Yes, yes. The entire school takes a vote when when a student wants to read a book called Genderqueer, but not all boys are blue.
book review committees in the community in my school district.
You want a
Doesn't sound
committee
familiar.
to decide?
There are committees.
Okay. Well, I'm asking you, how do we decide whether the two books that I just referenced should be available in the library? What would you, if you were running things, what would you do?
All Boys Aren't Blue, the scene you mentioned, is about sexual abuse.
I know what it's about.
It's not
What would you
erotic.
do in terms of making the books available?
Oh, wow, okay.
Would you say anybody can see them, or they have to be in a special session?
Students who do not read books like All Boys Aren't Blue cannot learn what is
I
appropriate.
understand that.
They cannot learn
I understand, but none
about
of you want to
abuse.
answer my question. You come here and you say censorship is bad, and of course it's bad. But the obvious response is, okay, you heard the books we're talking about. Okay, we're not talking about Catcher in the Rye.
Bro, that was a banned book.
So tell me what you want, who gets to decide. And all I've heard
You're
is
old enough
the
that you probably
librarians.
hated that book too.
And parents have nothing to do with it.
Parents.
And if that's your response, what planet did you just parachute in from?
Parents, Senator.
Or what country, more appropriately? This is not China.
Parents, Senator, for all due respect, parents absolutely have a say. My parents were immigrants, came to this country. We never checked out books without our parents seeing what books we were reading. They encouraged us to read
Mr.
books.
Secretary, I understand this is good for your politics back home.
It's got nothing to do
but
with my
I'm not-
politics. My bill is
Of course
passed.
it does.
My bill is
has
passed.
everything to do with your
I'm here- I'm
politics.
here to-
But you came here with a problem, and I'm trying to understand the solution, and you don't have one.
We solved the solution.
Other than to tell us that we don't agree with you, you're on the wrong. We'll be on the wrong side of history.
We solved the problem in Illinois. We fixed it because we.
Yeah, so there you go. The most unhinged words you will probably ever hear uttered in the halls of Congress.
A later chapter in the manifesto on the Department of Health and Human Services advocates that the president should direct agencies to rescind regulations interpreting sex discrimination provisions as prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, transgender status, sex characteristics, etc. This would strip protections for LGBTQ folks, as well as women, it seems, given that gender identity is listed, effectively making current regulations around sex discrimination fully obsolete. The chapter further states that the next president should require agencies to maintain a biblically based social science reinforced definition of marriage and family, meaning the next president should push to remove protections for same-sex marriage. And that's not the only reference to the Bible or the sanctity of the family in the policy document. Its 920 pages are littered with references to the Bible and Christianity and the traditional family unit. The foreword declares the most important community in each of our lives and the life of the nation is the family. Today, the American family is in crisis. 40% of all children are born to unmarried mothers, including more than 70% of black children. There is no government program that can replace the hole in a child's soul cut out by the absence of a father. Which, first of all, that's some old school Republican language. The loud welfare queen wolf whistle of Reagan rings on into the night, I see. But also, frankly, as someone without a dad, I can confirm that actually the health insurance I had through the state as a poor recently graduated 22-year-old paid for the therapy that I needed to fill that hole, so put that in your pipe and smoke it. But that's not the point. The point is to demonize single mothers, especially black ones, and place the blame of all of society's woes on the backs of individuals who just need to work harder to maintain their traditional family units, and not on the system that leads to impoverished single mothers in the first place, like, I don't know, the mass incarceration of black fathers, for example. One of the main stated goals of the policy is securing our God-given individual rights to live freely against the woke agenda. The opening note of the manifesto states, "Today the left is threatening the tax-exempt status of churches and charities that reject woke progressivism.
Oh, no.
They will soon turn to Christian schools and clubs with the same totalitarian intent." In the chapter on COVID-19 policies, the author asks, how much risk mitigation is worth the price of shutting down churches on the holiest day of the Christian calendar and far beyond, as happened in 2020? What is the proper balance of lives saved versus souls saved? And the fact that these people think that the federal government should be concerned with saving souls tells you enough about the belief system of the people who want to overrun our government. The chapter on the U.S. Department of Labor states, God ordained the Sabbath as a day of rest, and until very recently, the Judeo-Christian tradition sought to honor that mandate by moral and legal regulation of work on that day, and blames consumerism and secularism for the decline in Sabbath observance, calling on Congress to encourage communal rest by amending the Fair Labor Standards Act to require that workers be paid time and a half for hours worked on the Sabbath, which sounds kind of nice except for the whole Christian nationalism thing. The chapter on the U.S. Department of State says that special attention must be paid to challenges of religious freedom, especially the status of Middle Eastern Christians and other religious minorities, as well as the human trafficking endemic to the region. But of course we know which religious freedom they're concerned with here. In all of this, Project 2025 essentially creates a blueprint for the proliferation of a Christian nationalist agenda at every level of government. You guys, that's just one pillar of Project 2025. This 920-page manifesto is pillar number 1. But it is the most extensive because it lays out the foundation for everything to come, and how the next president should go about pushing every conservative talking point imaginable, all with the backdrop of eviscerating federal agencies and concentrating as much power as possible in the hands of the president. Pillar number 2 is the creation of a personnel database, what they're calling the conservative LinkedIn, which sounds like hell on earth, from which to pull qualified conservatives to place at every level of government. They have an application to be part of the personnel database linked on their website. So I thought, hell, maybe I'll apply. Y'all are always telling me that I should get involved in government. They even had boxes I could check saying that I'm liberal and progressive, so seems like maybe I'm welcome too. I just answered a few questions, and they were all interestingly worded as though they were trying to woke bait me, like, the gender wage gap is the result of prejudice and discrimination, agree or disagree? Or, the US needs nationalized healthcare, agree or disagree? I answered honestly, attached my resume, and submitted. A few minutes later, I received a confirmation email that my application had been received. We'll see what happens next. Seems like a good way to keep abreast of developments. Seems like definitely something that could easily, I don't know, be overrun with liberal and progressive applications. It would really be too bad if, like, every person who watched this video submitted an application to be added to the database. Seems like it would make their job a lot harder to find the good conservative candidates in all those applications. I mean, that's just like something I was thinking about. I'm just spitballing here, okay? I left the link to the application in the description just so that you can do your own independent research and form your own opinions. The third pillar of Project 2025 is training. According to the Project 2025 website, the Presidential Administration Academy covers topics ranging from how to identify appointee positions for which you qualify, to navigating the necessary background and security clearance processes, to recognizing and addressing the dangers of the administrative state. Potential appointees will learn the intricacies of the federal budget process, how to work with the media, managing congressional and stakeholder relations, the federal procurement process, and dozens of other topics that provide the knowledge and skills you'll need to be an effective presidential appointee. Current certificate programs offered are called Prepared to Serve, Conservative Governance 101, and Conservative Governance Advancing Policy, with more on the way. It appears that the application to take those courses is the same one to be added to the personnel database. So if you, for some reason, decided to, I don't know, submit an application and overwhelm their personnel database, maybe you would also be given access to these courses. I'm not sure. Definitely do your own research. The final pillar, pillar number 4, is the 180-day playbook. This appears to be yet to be written, but according to the website, the playbook would include a comprehensive, concrete transition plan for every single federal agency to implement in the first 180 days. This mirrors the plan that the Heritage Foundation gave to Reagan when he entered office, allowing him to hand off vetted conservative policy initiatives to each agency without having to do much work on his own. The Heritage Foundation, which is the creator of Project 2025, is seeking to redo what they did with Reagan, but put it on steroids. That 920-page manifesto is a good indication of the types of recommendations that they'll give to each agency. Okay, so I hope that I have sufficiently communicated the gravity of...
I believe you did. Okay. All right. All right. Well, now we're done with that. That's all the fun stuff I wanted to chat and share about. So now I'm downloading Roblox because you know what's coming, Diamond and Kay? You know what's coming? Where will it? Man, I never thought I'd be downloading Roblox. Is that okay? Hold on, let me fix the sound. I gotta get the sound fixed. Dressed to impress? You're making your avatar? Okay. We'll put this on line. Oh, I need to play it to my freaking headphones. That's right. Oh. What is it? Oh no! What? No, my stream's not up yet. Oh, this isn't good. Oh, sorry. Oh, it's Chrome. Okay, there we go. We'll figure it out like this, but I did not realize I was gonna get thrown into this. How do I turn? How do I look? How do I look around? Oh, that's how. Theme: pop stars versus rock stars. Oh my god. Okay. Ooh. How do I take stuff? I don't know how to do anything. Oh, put on. Wings? Pink wings are kind of pop star. Yeah, we'll go magenta. That's good. No, I need no. What is this? What is this? Step up. Plus $1. I have money? Oh. Okay, yeah, I like that. Okay. Yeah. Ooh. Mm-hmm. Actually, I like... Oh no, how do I take... Oh no, how do I take the one off? Oh. Yeah, that's... Yeah, okay, better. No, what's happening?